Is the prosecution farther ahead in making its case as this week ends, or potentially set back?
So I actually think at the end of this week, Stormy Daniels was somewhat of a detour that doesn't really go towards the net effect of their case. We started the case this week with Jeff McConney and Deborah Tarasoff, who they are the nuts and bolts of this case. It's a document case. And they gave us the documents. They connected the documents to the former president. And then we took this detour with Stormy Daniels, who I'm sure we'll talk more about. But her testimony, we have to see what the jury thinks of her credibility when it comes down to it.
Well, what do you think of it? Because this was a pretty remarkable experience, hearing such a salacious tale with so little objection from the defense. We had repeated requests for mistrials, but even the judge criticized Donald Trump's lawyer for not being more involved and more interactive in the moment. Did Donald Trump's legal team do him a disservice this week?
So before Stormy Daniels took the stand, the defense they asked the judge, they moved for him to limit her testimony. They said that they didn't want her to go into all of the underlying sexual acts. And the prosecution in that moment actually said that they weren't planning on going into very much of it. And so the judge allowed Stormy Daniels, obviously, to take the stand and to testify. And what the defense said when they made their mistrial motion was that, they thought that she was testifying within the limits of what the judge had allowed. And once they thought that she got way past what those guardrails were that were initially set up, that's when Susan Nettles started objecting pretty consistently and was getting sustained, which means that the judge was in her favor. The judge, I wasn't in court that day, but the judge people said that he seemed visibly irked with the way that the prosecution was bringing out evidence that really wasn't relevant to the case. And particularly in light of the Harvey Weinstein reversal last week, it's problematic. It was a lot of very salacious details, like you said, that really had nothing to do with whether or not the former president interfered with the election and falsified business records.
Well, perhaps what we will hear on Monday has a bit more to do with the actual charges with which the former president is charged. We spoke earlier with criminal defense attorney Robert McWhirter, and this is what he had to say about Michael Cohen.
Michael Cohen, I believe, is a much more important witness to the actual crime than, for instance, Stormy Daniels is. But he's also pretty much an open book. We know exactly what he's going to say, and we know exactly what they're going to do to try to attack him. And he's got a pretty good public narrative about he kind of had an epiphany about his role in helping Donald Trump.
But the epiphany itself is the question, Deanna. He has spent time in jail. When he gives this testimony, even if we largely know what he's going to say, is the jury going to buy it, or is he not credible enough?
That's something all of us are asking right now. It's a great question, and we'll have to see how he comes across on the stand. What the prosecution what they've been doing all along is kind of corroborating what they know Michael Cohen is going to say with all of these other witnesses before he takes the stand. And I anticipate on closing argument, they'll be able to say, here is the testimony of Hope Hicks, of Jeff McConney, of Deborah Tarasoff, of all these other witnesses. And even before we get to Michael Cohen, we've proven our case. And then you have Michael Cohen to add to it. I think the thing that they're going to run into, Michael Cohen, Alan Weisselberg, and Donald Trump were the only three people in the room who made this agreement. And so when it comes down to whether or not Trump knew that the records were false, it's one of those three people whose testimony we really need in order for them to be able to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's left to be seen if Michael Cohen is going to be enough for all of the jurors, because at the end of the day, all they need is one to hang the case.
Sounds like we're kind of done here, especially if everyone knows what Michael Cohen's going to say and how the defense might cross-examine. Or do you see that differently, Deanna? What does the defense have up its sleeve next week?
I mean, a big piece that's still missing, like I said, is whether or not Donald Trump knew that the records were false. Up to this point, the prosecution had done a great job in showing that, he wanted, whether or not the affair happened, this was a story that was about to come out right before the election. He wanted that story to be killed, to not come out at all. I mean, or if anything, after the election. And they've shown that there are all of these records that he's connected to. His signatures are on them. The checks were mailed to the White House. He signed them. He sent them back. The one missing piece, but it's a key piece, is that he knew that these records were false. I mean, for all we know, I don't think he'll take the stand. But if he did, he could testify and say, I thought it was a legal expense. I had no idea that it was a false record. And that's key for the prosecution right now to prove their case. And Michael Cohen is the witness that they need to do it through.
Deanna, whenever we've heard Donald Trump speaking outside the courthouse, basically for the entire duration of this trial, he has made sure to make it known that he is very unhappy with this gag order that he is under, which, of course, he's been found in violation of 10 times, threatened with jail time if it continues. If the prosecution's getting ready to rest their case next week, do continued violations really even matter, or is it now the jury that we have to concern ourselves with?
I mean, it matters in the sense that he could still be put into jail. Judge Merchan, was very clear on Monday that he urged Donald Trump, do not make me do this. But you've gotten to the point where it's really the only option that I have left in order to maintain the rule of law in the courtroom. And so does it matter? I mean, if Donald Trump's not sitting there anymore because he's in jail, because he's in violation of the order, I don't know what the jury will make of that. But I think what Judge Merchan said on Monday, there's broader implications to taking a former president and possibly future president and putting him in jail because he's in violation of a gag order. So it's yet to be seen. He was able to keep it together with Stormy Daniels on the stand. Michael Cohen, if there's anyone that can get under his skin more than Stormy Daniels, it's Michael Cohen. And so we'll see.